Next item.
Next item. During the commission meeting last week and for several weeks now, there's been much discussion regarding restoration on the western end of Holiday Isle. You directed me to hold a special TDC meeting to seek recommendation from the council for the project. The TDC met yesterday morning and unanimously agreed to recommend the Board of County Commissioners direct staff to take all steps in order to facilitate the dredging of Destin's East Pass while the Noriega Point project is underway, and further that we work to restore Holiday Isle's westernmost beaches as identified with tourist development funds using current year budget funds first and then reserves.
Thank you for the introduction. Vice Chairman Wines, I'll recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been an all-hands-on-deck endeavor. Myself and Mr. Stewart attended the Destin City Council last night. It was voted unanimously to proceed on their part. They have certain policies and procedures and permits that have to be approved, and this kind of mirrors the earlier item in the agenda on the north end, where we were saving mobilization fees, and the economy of scale was good for improving the situation. This is a win-win project. It does it makes a lot of good for a relatively small amount of money, in my view. It'll be funded out of the TDC bed tax funds, and I'll move that we direct staff to take all necessary steps to facilitate the dredging of Destin's East Pass during the renourishment project of Noriega Point. Further, that we work to renourish Holiday Isle's westernmost beaches with approximately 130,000 cubic yards of material using a cost estimate of $2 million. Now, if we get a second for discussion, I have something to say about that.
I'll second
Vice
that.
Chairman Wines moves the issue, and we have a second by Ketchel. Under discussion, Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being very familiar with Mother Nature and the springtime weather in Destin, I have to say that the only problem I can see with this cost estimate of $2 million is quite often during this time frame you get where the stationary fronts will stop and it'll blow for a week and be pretty rough. It may be that the dredge has to wait out some of these weather days. That could be of serious consideration in the bottom line. So I just want the board to be aware of that. So that's why I used a cost estimate at $2 million and not to exceed. So that's the only difference in the recommended motion and my motion.
Thank you very much for those comments. Commissioner Goodwin, do you have a comment? No?
I had a question.
Okay, question.
Given that this is a proposal to use dredge out of the East Pass, and understanding why we're talking about it, and certainly agreeing that we've been faced with a critical need out there on Holiday Isle and what's occurred, is there any difference in the type of beach restoration we might expect to see? In other words, where the sand might be placed, how much beach may be gained for this type of project versus if we did a traditional beach restoration?
Yes, that's why I brought Jim.
Mr. Trefilio, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Answer your question directly, it's a little bit different than what we did in 2013. The permit is actually held by the City of Destin, and what it requires for this particular restoration project, should we do it, is that the water, or the sand rather, cannot go further landward than essentially the wet sand area. So it'll be placed on what's known as a swash zone, which is really wet sand and then a little bit seaward to an elevation of no more than 3 feet.
So in other words, it can't be used for dune buildup or any of that sort of thing?
No, not with this particular permit.
So actually, that'll be up to the mean high water line. So really, the public that walks up down that would be nourishing that area.
Yes, and it will add dry beach to the project. It just won't be as impressive as the 2013 project was.
And Mr. Chairman, that's one of the reasons I'm asking, because we're talking about spending a lot of money, and I think it's the right thing to do, but I want to make sure that nobody from the public is misled to thinking we're going to spend $2 million and they're about to get 30, 40 feet of beach put back or 100 feet. It's not going to look like that, is it?
Not right away. I mean, there's certainly, it's not going to be as good as the 2013 project, but that sand that's placed back into the system is going to be available for the beach to restore itself naturally over time, because that sand that we lost since 2013, a lot of it has gone into that gap that we were forced to create in the middle of the project. That gap is not as bad as it used to be, and so its negative effect is not as bad as it used to be. So any sand we put in there is going to be more useful.
Mr. Boyles?
A specific
Commissioner Boyles,
question
you
on
have a
that
question?
point, that we're putting the sand to the west of the gap, is that correct?
That's correct.
We will not be placing any sand to the east of the gap.
No.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, I'll have some other follow-up. I think I would like, I know you, at some point we'll be taking public comment, so reserve till after that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Adams?
And may I add, and Commissioner Boyles, you and I talked about this briefly too, and Jim and I started talking. This is the beginning of I think a longer look at restoring our beaches in the future and what the critical needs are moving down the road. And having this is my first project here, but I see that we need to have broader discussions. But this is just the timing and having the dredge there and being able to utilize it and do this project is perfect for right now.
Mr. Chairman, and if I may, that kind of leads into where my second point was going to be, and we've had this discussion a bit, and so I appreciate you moving us in that direction. Following this motion and vote, but I'd like to get at least as consensus from this commission to direct staff to look at what the process would be for doing an analysis of long-term stabilization, whatever the proper language is to try and fix that beach in a way that doesn't require continued and relentless renourishment. Because I think what we've learned from this process, if we did a renourishment in 13 and we're renourishing in 18 and there's been no major storm events, then the system equilibrium is not where it needs to be for those condos and those homes that have now created a hard line in the sand on that point. And so whether that's submerged breakwaters, whether it's extending the eastern jetty, whether it's some other technical alternative that I don't know about, I think we should begin the process of evaluating what those long-term options are that would provide a stabilized beach that is further seaward than it is currently. Thank you.
And those are all good points. Ms. Adams, you got anything else
Yes,
before? I only have 3 speaker cards for the rest of the day, actually. Rebecca and David Sherry and Rick Chappell, do y'all still want to speak to this item? Everybody, you don't want to speak? Okay. So everybody's waiving their time to speak. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Commissioner Goodwin, any further comments?
Yes, I do just want, in speaking to one of the earlier comments, I think Commissioner Boyles pointed out that it might be a good idea to look at more long-term solutions, and I'm a big advocate of that. Understanding this is a short-term fix, a costly one. What's our beach restoration reserve right now? Rough number.
About 11 million.
So, I mean, 2 million, that's a significant percentage. It doesn't gut it, but it's significant, I would say.
Right, and there are 2 funding sources. There's a East Pass dredging fund that has some dollars in there, and then there's the emergency fund, which is interesting word to use, which has the 11 million. And we need to just I think in the future, not just wait for the emergency and have that long-term plan.
Agreed. And so I would definitely encourage you, and we'll support your department in marching forward looking for ways to do, more permanent stabilization. My understanding, and, Mr. Trefilio or Mr. Tram will correct me if I'm wrong, but traditional beach restoration uses a methodology that considers the restored beach basically a sacrificial anode. In other words, they assume it's going to erode. And that's an expensive task to undertake, understanding it's going to disappear. I get the purpose behind it. It's that it protects the beach that was there before. But still, if we could find ways to not have to do this every 5 years, even if it's $2-3 million, I will wholeheartedly support those efforts. And I just think we need to take that perspective, and I wanted to voice my support for that.
Absolutely.
Commissioners, is there any other comments on this motion? And we'll have another discussion about this motion. Commissioner Ketchel.
Commissioner Goodwin, are you talking about all beaches in Okaloosa County?
Well, I think that we should look at all beaches in
No, I
Okaloosa
just
County
wanted to make sure I
and
understood.
understand. But my main point was, at least in this particular area, we know it has a habitual problem of eroding to the point that we get, 50, 60 emails. That, to me, signals that it's a problem. because people are speaking out.
Or
So we know it's going to probably happen again, even if we do this $2 million job.
No, I agree. I just wanted
I just
to
wanna make-
understand if your ideas were to look at all the beaches in Okaloosa County and the effect of erosion on all of them.
I will leave that to subject matter experts to help with the scope, but I'm not trying to limit it, and I'm not doing it as a motion, I'm just
I know,
speaking
I just wanted to
broad
ask.
concept.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to move to call the question here and take the vote. All in favor of this item signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. No nays. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.